When it comes to aerial photography, especially twilight aerials, unlike daytime aerials where we have the sun out and it makes things pretty easy to capture that photo and deliver it to our client, with twilights it's a little bit more difficult, especially when you have a home with mixed lighting. There's a lot more finessing you have to do on the computer to deliver that final product to your client. So today we're going to be reviewing two images. The first one, it's a little bit more complicated, but I want to show you the approach I take as to delivering that final photo for our client, editing it in Lightroom and Photoshop, and just finessing it till it looks good. The second one is a little bit more easier because we don't have a lot of mixed lighting, so it makes the process faster when it comes to shooting and delivering that photo for our client. So let's get to it. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. And for those of you who are new, my name is Fraser Almeida. I'm a photographer based here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I specialize in luxury real estate, architecture, and interior design. Today we're going to be reviewing two photos when it comes to aerial photography. I just want to show you guys my approach as to editing these photos so we can deliver it to our client. Hopefully some of these approaches will help you out when you're shooting and editing for your client to make things a little bit easier when you're stuck in a situation that you're going to see here today. And guys, those early bird tickets finally went on sale on May 23rd. And they all sold out, those 75 tickets, in 14 minutes. That just shows you how excited everybody is for this event. It's going to be an amazing event for those photographers out there who are interested in media, video, photography, and just want to network and connect and learn with so many people in this industry. This is the place to be. I hope to see you guys all there this November. The standard tickets are still available, so you guys can go online to pmreconference.com to get your tickets, as well as join a workshop. There's many workshops still available. Many of them are already half sold out, and some of them are actually sold out. I'll be there along with Tony Colangelo and Wayne Capilli teaching a workshop on luxury real estate photography. So if you guys are still interested, join my workshop. I'd love to see you guys there. So make sure you guys go to pmreconference.com to register and join a workshop, whether it's mine or any of the other ones out there. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get to this image breakdown. So here's that mixed lighting twilight that I was talking about. As you can see, we have a few things we need to tackle here. Number one, look at the color on the property itself, right? We have that yellow glow coming onto this property. Now, I like warm, right? I like warm because it's inviting, but that's a little bit too warm, especially because this is a white modern house. So we want to dial that back a little bit so we can bring in more of the white color of the home, but not this yellow, right? We don't want it to be this yellow. We do want a warmth in the windows, but not this yellow on the outside. Along with that, we do have this TV here that's casting this blue light onto the property as well. So we need to tone that down and also replace that TV screen. This property was sitting on a hill. So because it's sitting on a hill, this fire feature, as you can see right here, kept blowing out because it was just so windy. It wasn't crazy windy, but windy enough that it kept setting off that fire feature. So we have to make sure that back on the computer, we extend that flame in Photoshop so that it goes across this whole thing. Other than that, I do like down here below, I like the color here. That looks pretty good. I like the warmth there. That's the goal I'm trying to go for, is like that warm, inviting feeling rather than it to be too warm or too cold, right? I want to have a nice balance between the two. And then other than that, the sky here, it's really boring. I definitely think I'm going to do a sky replacement. Wasn't really any pretty colors or pretty clouds that day. So that's the beauty of Photoshop. We get to use the tools there to enhance this photo and make it look good. And then other than that, we do have another color cast happening here with these lights down here. So I want to dial that back so it's just nice and white, and it's not casting color onto the back of these lawn chairs here. And that's pretty much it. There's not too much going on here. My main goal here is pretty much to dial back the color on the walls of the house. Also on the interior, dial that back so it's not so warm. It's a little bit more color corrected for the interior, and especially that TV. I want to dial that back, replace the screen with something that looks good, and then just kind of balance the scene with the ambient and the home itself so it kind of looks good both together as one photo rather than everything competing with each other. So let's take a look at the final image of this shot and see what we came up with. So here's the final edit for this aerial photo, and as you can see, it's a beautifully balanced photo between the ambient and the home light itself. We had those mixed lighting conditions, but we solved that by finessing this to make it look good. As you can see, number one, look at the TV. We have that taken care of. It's not intensely nuclear white. We replaced the TV screen and dialed back the exposure on that. We also fixed the problem areas where we had all that yellow on top of the building. So as you can see, we kind of tackled that and toned that down a bit. As well as the interior, we kind of brought it to a point where it's nice and inviting without it being too overdone with the warmth. It's just a little balance between the two. And then I love the full fire feature here. We kind of fixed that as well. And just entirely balance the whole home within the ambient surroundings, which is all this over here, and the main area of the house itself. I think all that fits perfectly, along with the new sky replacement that we added. I think this was actually a stock sky that came with the sky replacement that Photoshop had, and I think it looks pretty good. Lots of pinks and blues with wisps in the sky, nothing too intense, just something subtle that goes along with the pool. So I think it's a nice balance of the two. And that's pretty much it. Let's take a look at this back on the computer so you guys can see how we build this one up. So here we are in Lightroom, and as you can see, this is our final edited image, but I want to show you guys real quick how we got to this point. Number one, we first started off with these 5 brackets, and my go-to pretty much when it comes to Twilight is I always do a bracket of 5. I'm at f2.8 at ISO 200, and I'm on aperture priority. That's pretty much my go-to, and I can adjust from there, but for the most part, that really gets me in the ballpark of getting these images shot. So once I'm back to the computer, pretty much what I do is I take those 5 images, I merge them, so if I right-click here, and I go to Photo Merge HDR, and what that does is it gives me a huge raw file to work with, so I can push and pull those sliders in Lightroom to make the photo look good without destroying the image and getting it too pixelated or grainy. So after that was done, I pretty much created these 2 files here. So as you can see, we have one image here which is a little bit more warmer, and then we have this other image here which is balanced more for the interior of the property. So as you can see, I like the color of the interior of the property here. It's a little bit too cool for the rest of the scene, but the interior looks good and the walls of the house look good. And this other image here, the grounds look good, and I like the warmth here, but it's a little bit too warm when it comes to the inside. So it's a little bit of a balancing act between those 2 images that I'm going to take into Photoshop and then build this whole thing up. So let's open this up in Photoshop and see. You can see exactly how we build this up. So here's our image in Photoshop, and let's build this up from the bottom. So starting off with, here's our base layer here, which is our little bit more warmer toned image where I like the lighting on the grounds and some of the surrounding areas, but the house itself is a little bit too warm. Next, I brought in this layer, which is our cooler temperature layer, which I do like the interior lighting. I like the color and balance of that, as well as I do like that the house is a little bit more true to the color of it being white, but it's a little bit too cool. But we're gonna fix that. It's a little bit too cool here, but adding a mask, we just kind of brush in the areas that we want. So this is a before and after, and as far as the mask, you can see that's kind of what we brought in. So before, after, and then here we just kind of warmed up that blue. It was a little bit too blue, so just adding a little bit more warmth to that so that it doesn't look so blue with a little bit of a hue saturation. Next, we toned down some of the blues that's surrounding the property. So as you can see down here where these lights are at on the ground along the floor, and as well as here on the left side, we kind of dial back the blues there. And on top of the top of the building as well, I think there was some blue as well. So we kind of added a hue saturation there and dial that back. And don't worry that we're bleeding into the sky. We're going to fix that anyway because we're going to be doing a sky replacement. Next, here's the curves. And all I did with the curves is, as you can see here, we just kind of added a little bit of an S curve there just to give it a little bit more pop and a little bit more punch so it doesn't look so flat. So as you can see here, this is before and after. What a difference that makes. Next. Now this curve, it's very subtle, but this left side area here, because of the TV, it's throwing a blue cast on top of this wall. So I just kind of dialed that back a hair. So this is before and after. You can kind of see there's a little bit more of that blue there. So I just kind of dialed that back a hair. Next, I brought in an ambient layer for the highlights. As you can see here, the highlights are pretty hot here right now. So bringing back an ambient layer, which is just specifically targeted for the highlights, allowed me to just kind of brush in those areas that I only wanted to, get a little more detail in those highlights. And all I pretty much did was use a mask, and I did the pretty much kind of like, if you guys are familiar with Raya Pro or Lumenzia, these are like luminosity programs that help you to create mask and fill in like and blend in images. I kind of did it the manual way, which is using apply image. If you guys, I'm sure if you guys YouTube apply image and that approach, you guys can see it's the exact same thing, just a manual way of doing it. But pretty much that's what I did. I kind of used that to create a mask, and then I use that mask to bring back my highlights. So as you can see, we have the detail there. So there's a before and after in the highlights. Next, as you can see, we got that fire we need to tackle. So I just used a clone brush and kind of extended that fire along the length of the pool. And I made sure when I was flying that even though the wind was blowing and turning the fire feature off and on, that I made sure that I at least got a little bit of that fire feature on, because as long as I have a little bit of it on, I can fix the rest of it. But without anything there, it would have been a little bit more difficult to make a believable looking fire. With something there, at least I can make that look believable, because it's not that difficult to extend that and clone it along the length of that pool, right? So here's the before and after for that fire feature, and what a huge difference that makes. Next, we got our TV here. And what I want to show you guys here is, do you guys see the blooming behind that TV screen, right? So we just use another layer here and kind of fix that. So just to clean that up so it doesn't look so colorful back there. And I want to show you guys one more thing. The original TV that I brought in looked like this, right? It was way too dark. There's no way that looks believable. That TV is pretty intensely bright, and we want to make that look the way it is when in this photo. So pretty much all I did was added the levels and just kind of brought up the value of the luminosity of that screen, so it doesn't look so dark. So it's a little bit more believable to what it is, as if you were really there. And then other than that, here's our sky replacement. And like I said, this is a stock image from the sky replacement that's built in within Photoshop. And I think this one looked pretty good. I like the width of pinks and blues in the sky, and I think it matches perfectly with the colors of the pool. And then on top of that, I just added a hue saturation just to give it a little bit more punch for the colors in the sky. And that's pretty much it. We saved that, bring it back into Lightroom. And then all we did here was, if we look at our layers here, a couple things we did for our mask. Number one, here's a before and after. Do you see behind the actual TV, because of the intensity of that light, it was kind of washing out the trees back there. So I kind of brought back some contrast onto the trees so it doesn't look so washed out. So I just did a mask and added some contrast, as you can see here. Next. So if I take this off, this wine area here inside the house was very blue, and it didn't match the rest of the colors of the interior of the house. So all I did was I used a brush and I just warmed that up so it looked a little bit more consistent with the rest of the lighting of the house. And then lastly here, the house was still a little bit blue, but I just wanted to add a touch of warmth to it. So I just added another brush here. And as you can see here, I did a color range for that blue. And all I did was go here and I just added a temperature, added 10 onto the temperature, just a very subtle amount, but enough that it warms it up slightly to make it a little more pleasant. And then I did added a brush, which was pretty much a intersect mask with brush, which what that allows you to do is target specific areas so that it's not affecting the entire scene, it's only affecting the areas you brush in. So if I take that off and on, you can see it's very subtle, but it does make a difference for the warmth of that house. And that's pretty much it as far as masks go. And then other than that, we did, I think, yeah, we just cleaned up a little bit of some blemishes here for the surrounding grounds. And then we just fixed the verticals on here. So actually the verticals were fixed prior to this. So it looks pretty good right now as it is. And that's pretty much it. So as you can see, this one was a little bit more involved because we did have that mixed lighting. But if you guys kind of have that approach of going into this with just tackling things little by little, you guys can, overcome something like this relatively easily without having to spend too much time into it. Pretty much my main go-to with this was when I was on site was understanding, okay, I got to tackle that fire feature, which is a clone job in Photoshop. I got to balance out this lights, which is same thing in Lightroom and Photoshop, having two layers to work with so I can brush in the good bits that I want and remove the parts that I don't want. And then the TV, that's pretty much the only other thing that we need to really tackle, along with the sky. And that's pretty much it. We kind of added all that together to make this one final image for our client. And that's it. I think they're going to be happy with this, and I can't wait for them to see it. Just a couple of little tips I want to share with you guys when it comes to aerial twilights. You want to first off make sure you get there early enough to prep the house, because sometimes whether you're there for your client or a commercial client or whoever it is, things aren't just going to be ready to go. 9 times out of 10, things aren't ready, and you, the professional, need to be there to make sure things are ready to go. So when you fly up in the air, everything's done. You don't have to sit there and fix things. You can just focus on capturing good photos. So when you get there early, make sure your pool lights are on, any kind of features are on, waterfalls, fire features, entertainment areas like this TV and this particular photo. Go around, look at the furniture, make sure that pillows are fluffed. If there's lawn chairs, the backs are up so that it looks visually appealing into a photo. And make sure there's no clutter and things are cleaned up, because all that stuff you don't want to have to deal with when you're in the air flying. When you're flying, all you want to care about is nice composition so you can be in and out of there quick, because time is going really, really fast when it comes to twilights. We don't have that much time to spend, unlike a daytime photo where we have a lot more time because the sun is out. With twilight, that light is falling very, very fast, and we want to be in and out there quick when it comes to capturing those twilight aerials. Also, another thing I want you guys to be aware of, just because you have a drone doesn't mean that you need to think of it differently from a tripod. I really want you guys to think of it as a tripod in the sky. And the reason why I say that is because you still need to be a photographer, and you still need to compose good for your client and your subject. Think of it as if you really had a tripod, and if you could just go up higher, how would you compose? And that's why this particular composition, I shot it the way I did. I didn't want to get above the roof line. I wanted to get underneath it just to be nicely composed within the scene so I can appreciate the view of the pool feature, of the interior of the house, and of the entertainment center there, along with that fire feature as well. Those are the main key points for this backyard. And had I had been maybe up way too high, I would have lost the appeal of that. Everything would have become small. It wouldn't be as dominant. This particular composition, things are dominant enough where you can appreciate everything, and it really helps to sell this property for our client. Otherwise, if we're just going around and spraying and shooting and doing all these crazy angles, we're not going to really focus on what's the key thing that's going to really help sell this property. So sell this property or be a feature that our client needs for their portfolio or whatever it is, right? So just think about that when you guys are out there shooting. Don't just think of it as a drone. Think of it as a tripod in the sky. That's going to help you to really stop and compose rather than just shoot all these funky angles and make it just a not desirable composition. So let's get to our last image here. So here's our ambient image for this property, and like I said before, I'm using 5 brackets. This is the first of the 5, so there's a lot more brighter images in this set of 5, but this is the first one here. So in regards to the things that I want to tackle, number 1 is there are some highlighted areas in the property itself, so I want to make sure that I bring back the detail in that. Also, I want to bring up the exposure in the surrounding areas so that it's not so dark, and with the other exposures I can definitely do that. The sky, I actually kind of like it. I can see there is some wisp of clouds there and some color back there. So I think just selecting that in Lightroom and adding some saturation and pop to that will make it look good. And that's pretty much it. We just need to tweak this in Lightroom very, very subtly. It's not too much that we need to do. And if we bring it into Photoshop, really it will only be for the highlights to probably tame that back and bring in more detail. But that's it. So let's take a look at the final image of this one. So here's our final edited image, and as you can see, it looks really, really good. I love the balance of the ground surrounding the property and the building itself. I think it looks really, really good, and it fits the scene perfectly. There really was not that much we needed to do for this scene. Everything was nicely balanced because all the lighting was the same color temperature, so it made our job easier when it came to editing. So we fixed all the highlights and the color onto the property. We also fixed all the areas around the property. So we brought up the detail into that so it's not so dark. And the same thing with the sky. We kind of just enhanced that within Lightroom, added some pop to the sky, so it did some saturation of color. And that's it. It's really not that difficult for this particular image. Let's take a look at this back in Lightroom so you can see how we built this up. So you can see how fast, when we have a scene like this that's very simple, all consistent with the lighting, it really makes our job really easy when it comes back to taking it onto the computer and delivering it for our client. So here we are in Lightroom, and as you can see, here's that final image. And I just want to show you guys, as you can see below, here are our 5 brackets. And then once we had our merged HDR image, I just tweaked the settings to make this image look good. So I dropped the white balance to 5200, brought up the exposure just a hair, highlights negative 100, opened up the shadows to 100, added a little bit of blacks, clarity, and then on top of that, we added a mask. So here's our sky. As you can see, there's a before and after. So just selecting the sky and adding some saturation to it helped it to get some pop in there. Next. As you can see, I wanted to tone down the highlights on the building itself. So this is before. It was a little bit too intense. So just selecting the luminosity of the image and then dial it back. Here's the settings for it. So if you see here, I pretty much dropped the exposure just a hair, and I dropped down the highlights, and then I just brushed in the areas that I wanted to show. So this is before and after. And then lastly, there was a little bit of a blue tint onto the property itself, so I just kind of killed that blue. So if you notice here, the color range, I just kind of dropped the saturation on that blue so it's not so intense. And then I just brushed on the areas that I wanted to remove it. So which was primarily, you can see in the red, the main house building itself. So this is before and after. And that's pretty much it. Other than that, we did add some highlights. Oh, we dropped the highlights down on this ambient layer because what I wanted to do was just bring it back into Photoshop to just add a little bit more information onto the highlights. So if we open this up, so here's our starting off image, and then this is our highlight layer. So this is pretty much just dropping the highlights just a hair, as you can see on the building where the balcony is at. Just bringing a little bit more information there, and also on the fire features, you can see I added some more information there. So if I go before and after, I just think that looks a little bit better. It's very subtle, but I noticed it. And we save that, bring it back into Lightroom, and that's pretty much it. Everything else is pretty much ready to go. We didn't do anything else except for we did add some guides to just vertically straight the image so it's nice and leveled. And that's it. It's a final polished image for our client, ready to go. So as you can see, between this one and the other one, when you have a scene like this where the light is very consistent, the color is the same, it's really easy to deliver a photo that's not going to take you so much time on the computer, and you can send it off to your client very quick. Unlike the other one where there's a lot more involved, there's a lot more mixed lighting, and you have to take the time to, finesse it to make it look good. But we're the professionals and we have to do that. Whether you're sending it off to an editor that's qualified to do it, or you have the skill you set yourself, you have to make sure you take that time to make that image look good. Don't just shoot from the drone and expect that that's good enough. That's not good enough. You have to make sure that you finesse that until it looks good enough for your client to be able to use and market for themselves or showcase in their portfolio. Well guys, thanks again for joining me on this video. I hope you guys found some tips that's going to help you out when you're out there shooting those aerial twilights for your own client. Hopefully some of these techniques that's going to help you when you're out there on the field or back at the computer editing, delivering that final photo for your client. And remember guys to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and it allows me to make these type of videos. Hopefully I'll see you guys there this November at the workshop or at the conference. Remember to go to pmreconference.com to get your tickets or join those workshops. Until next time guys, remember, keep on shooting and I'll see you then.